Welcome back to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This is where we blur the lines between business, nonprofit, and impact. I'm your host, Wendy V, and I'm a social impact strategist here to help you build a successful and sustainable legacy of social change. In this week's episode, we're going to hear from a social entrepreneur who has been on a journey to change the world just like you. If you are interested in social entrepreneurship, this is the place for you. Let's jump right into this week's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. I'm your host, Wendy B, and I'm joined today by one of my new friends, Rachel Murray. She is going to tell us all about why we need to get over our sugar addiction. Now, I am definitely someone who falls into this category. I love sweets, and I am here to learn a ton from Rachel today. So let's jump right in. And I wanted to just ask you first if you could just give us a quick introduction to you and what you've been working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, like you said, my name is Rachel Murray. I'm a nutritionist, a former registered nurse. And the big thing that I've been working on lately is really just educating women about sugar addiction, trying to take away that shame and stigma around it and teach them that it is possible to live a craving free life.
Yeah, and I know this firsthand that there's quite a lot of work to do that. And so, how did you decide that you were going to focus in this area after years of experience that you had? You said you were a registered nurse, you're a dietitian. How did you just move in the direction of focusing on sugar?
Yeah, so it was actually a bit of a twisted story. So I originally got into nutrition because I was trying to heal my own health issues. That at that point I was like sugar addiction wasn't really on my radar. But as I did that program, I went on to become a nutritionist and actually started seeing clients and found that I was attracting the same kind of women who really were struggling with cravings and um, just had this a lot of shame and guilt around the way that they ate. And so and to go along with that, like I think that weight loss was probably the main concern that they came to me with. And I just found that these clients found it so challenging to moderate their sugar intake. And like I said, they had that shame around it. And subconsciously, I was actually experiencing the same thing in my life, but I hadn't really admitted it to myself. And so I went on this journey of doing some continuing education to help support these clients. And it was actually through that training that my mentor um, told me that I was actually a sugar addict. And so while I knew that I had struggled with with the sugar for a long time, I hadn't really um, admitted that it could be an addiction or really understand what that was all about. So you know, I was following the same path that my clients were, where um, often I could eat healthy during the day, but then, the afternoon, evening would come and um, I would cave and look for sugar wherever I could find it. And it was just obsessing about it all the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I never really thought of sugar as something you could be addicted to either until I met you. And then you started explaining it to me, and I went, oh, this makes a lot of sense. So, for folks who are listening and wondering what exactly is a sugar addict, or how do you know if you are addicted to sugar or have this issue, what is the definition, or how do people understand it a little bit deeper?
Yeah. So, I mean, sugar addiction is really just one kind of term under this umbrella of overall addiction. Like addiction is one disease, and we say that it's one disease and it has many outlets, and sugar addiction is one of them. And oftentimes, that addiction can shift throughout our life. So sometimes, alcohol is a little more to the forefront, or maybe we get our sugar addiction under control, but then we're spending more time scrolling on social media or shopping. So the addiction piece itself really does just kind of hold one space, and then it has these little areas that shoot out from it. But it really is just you know an obsession that we try to control. And like I said, it comes out in different ways. And the sugar piece, I think, for a lot of people, it does get a little complicated because if we compare it to other addictions like alcohol, for example, if that's our main issue, we can remove that from our life. Whereas sugar, it's tied up in food, and we can't completely remove food from our diet. So it does get a little bit more complex in that way. So there's a lot of nuance to it, but there is a way uh, to simplify it. And I think that there are some questions that you can ask yourself um, to really start to understand if sugar is a problem for you, and if you think you might be addicted. And one of the ways is just being honest with yourself regarding your ability to actually moderate it. So um, you may have heard um, I can't think of the author now, but she wrote a book that talked about whether you're a moderator or an abstainer. And for the true sugar addict, we are abstainers. Like we can't moderate our intake. So the one example that I often give is we probably all have a friend who can take like one bite of a cookie and then like put it down and kind of forget about it. Whereas for the sugar addict, like we take one bite of a cookie and we just want more. So we're not able to moderate it.
I have known people who can open a pint of ice cream and take one scoop and put it back in the freezer for like 2 months, and I'm like, "I don't understand this behavior."
Yeah,
It needs
exactly.
to be eaten. So the I guess the other part of this question about, sugar addiction and how you kinda came about understanding it is, you were focused on, maybe more holistic views of nutrition or health, and then really said, "No, I'm gonna double down and help people in this area." Why did you decide that this was the most impactful way for you to spend your time? How did you determine that part of your business, that this was how you wanted to make an impact?
You know what? I don't really think it was a conscious decision that I made. It was, like I said, I was attracting these certain women that were struggling with sugar, and I came to the realization that that was what I had struggled with almost like my entire adult life and most of my teen life as well. So it actually came out of my own self healing journey that I realized this population of people is so underserved and so misunderstood. And I wanted the help, and I was getting, support from all these amazing mentors that I connected with. And I was just shocked at how, like I said, how underserved that population was, and just in general, um, how little the public knows about sugar addiction. So, yeah, it wasn't really a decision that I made. It was more just a calling that I realized, like, this is what I have to do.
Yeah, no, that's always cool to hear when people just decide, "I know I'm gonna do this," and then you have these wonderful benefits to other people from that effort. And I think a lot of people might not understand how they can even get help with this. I think if some people are listening and wondering, okay, is this me? The next step is sort of thinking, well, what do I do about it? So can you explain a little bit more about, what is the first step people need to take if they're interested in, exploring further about this topic or exploring, where they are on this level of sugar addiction?
Yeah, I think the biggest or the first step you have to take is admitting it to yourself that you could be a sugar addict. And not everybody is. I mean, there are people who struggle with sugar addiction who or who people who struggle with sugar who aren't addicted. And we you may hear them called harmful users rather than a sugar addict. So they are able to perhaps moderate or cut down on their sugar and they don't have that same, um, drive to eat sugar than an addict would. So I think just being honest with yourself where you are and how you react to sugar. Um, and then I think the next thing to do is just to reach out to a professional who you trust that's working in this area, and the area is growing. Like there are others out there who are working in this field and really supporting and making a difference in the lives of the people who struggle with sugar addiction. And yeah, I think that it's just important to be able to be honest and then be willing um to see nutrition in a different light, because I think that we've been told for so long that we need to learn how to moderate and that we need to find balance and that all foods fit. And I think for the sugar addict, this isn't very helpful because, like I said, um, a cookie can be really triggering for the sugar addict, and trying to moderate that cookie isn't going to be a helpful strategy. We need to, remove certain foods that are triggering, and um, you know, that's going to look different for everybody. That's another really key area that we need to understand, is that there is no one diet that's going to be appropriate for anyone, especially the sugar addict, because there's different foods that are going to trigger us. I mean, processed foods in general are going to be like the big key ones that we're going to try to avoid, but um, we don't want to, dwindle our food plan down to this thing that becomes so unsustainable. We have to realize that we're all individual, and that there are going to be certain foods that don't work for us, but there's probably a lot of foods that you don't have to cut out, that maybe somebody else does. So just being open to that individualized approach.
And I think a lot of people struggle with their eating, struggle with food, or struggle with the time to prepare wholesome, healthy meals after, working or, needing to help their family. There's just so many barriers to eating healthy and even access to the ingredients and I'm fortunately back in Maryland, but I've lived in places like New Orleans or even in Houston. And sometimes there's entire neighborhoods that are food deserts. And
Right.
so it is difficult for people to find anything sometimes besides processed food, particularly when you're talking about people of color or people who live in inner city urban areas. And, I think there is like sometimes a misconception about why people don't eat healthy because
Yeah.
sometimes it is, simply the lack of education of how to prepare even healthy food. So if people are thinking, okay, yes, I know I'm not supposed to eat processed food, but time wise or access wise, this is what I have. What can people start doing? Like, what are tips they can have to take away from this podcast to eat healthier when you're facing barriers like time or access or, resources, those kinds of things?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's that's a really big question, and I think that there's a lot of work to be done in that area. And I can't say that I have the answers for all of it, but I think one of the things that we can do is really just, again, be honest with ourselves about where we're at. And it's not about doing things perfectly, but it's about taking that next best step for you. What is one thing that you could do to make a change? So, I mean, if we're looking at fast food, for example, like there are things that you can order off the menu, or slightly change your orders so that you aren't getting all those, nutrient poor carbs that really aren't doing anything for your nutrition. So you could order a burger without the bun, or, some kind of meat off the menu, or protein without all the extra carbs. So that's one thing that you can do. Um, and then in terms of going to the grocery store, there are cheaper cuts of meat that you can prepare in a slow cooker. So, it's saving you money and it's saving you time by preparing it like that. Which, like you said, time is a huge one for a lot of people, especially, you know, if you have two parents that are working full-time jobs, come home, it's busy, you're tired. Um, the slow cooker is one that I recommend using. Like, I use it year round because it's such a time saver. And again, it can take those maybe cheaper cuts of meat that aren't, they're not, um, they might be tougher to eat. It just makes them more enjoyable. So those are a couple of strategies that you can apply. And then, in terms of the food deserts, um, unfortunately, we don't struggle with that as much in Canada, but I know that it is a big problem in the US. So um, I can't speak to that a whole lot, but um, if you do have any kind of access um, to farmers markets or finding local farms that perhaps deliver or that you can get access to, then oftentimes you can make deals with them to again get your proteins at a more affordable price.
Yeah, and I think that, especially with people, maybe not knowing how to prepare food, one of the things that I did when I was first, exploring vegetables, that's what I was calling it, is that I needed to find a vegetable I didn't know how to prepare each week when I went to the grocery store and purchase it, or if I went to the farmer's market and saw something I didn't recognize, I would purchase it, and then I would learn how to prepare it, and then I could decide if I liked it or not, right? Because there were so many things that I told myself, "Oh, I don't like that," which were leftover narratives from my childhood of, who knows where they substantiated. They were maybe, like, not even really my narratives. I might have gotten them from someone. And then when I was an adult and realized, "Oh, my plate is not as diverse as it needs to be," and I started learning about nutrition, I thought, well, the easiest thing for me to do is to commit to, the scary thing of cooking a new vegetable. And that was my answer to this problem. And as I started doing that, I started noticing, what vegetables were more affordable, which ones had more nutrients, which ones could be prepared best in what manner. And then I was able to map that back to like my schedule and how much time I had to prepare those foods. And so I think that it does take a little bit of work, but if people are, willing to get into the scary parts of food of like, there's things I don't know how to prepare, I don't know how to work with, but I'm going to try to learn and then decide if this doesn't work for me. That's also another approach that people can take.
Yeah, I love that. And especially just, like you said, taking a small step and trying one new thing a week. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can still make a difference by just taking these baby steps.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to have like a whole new cart of foods you don't know how to work with. If you're comfortable with, certain foods, then add diversity to the cart little by little, but don't go out and I did that once actually with a cleanse diet. And you mentioned not being sustainable. It was great to understand how to create, 13 new meals I never had heard of before, but eating in that manner and the cost of it also was very prohibitive from that being like a lifestyle choice. Even though it was great as a cleanse and it was great for 2 weeks, it didn't really make any sense in the long run. So I think, the other thing you mentioned besides time, but also barrier, it is just the lack of sustainability in people's lives for them to make these kinds of changes. So how do you, as like a coach or a resource or a support, how do you work with people to get them to be able to make these changes that are going to enhance their lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it very much follows exactly what we just talked about and taking these small steps. So, looking at where they're at and, we can go through the meals that they currently eat and perhaps we can just tweak some of them. It's not like we have to create a whole new menu plan for them. We take what they like, and if it's not serving them, then we just find little ways that we can change it up. So, for example, like my family, we love burgers, but we don't eat them on buns anymore. We have them over a salad or over some kind of greens, or we just get creative with them and make sure that we have lots of flavors in terms of um, like condiments and toppings, like fermented foods that give flavor, but they're also giving nutrients so that we can um, we know that we're nourishing our body, but we're still able to enjoy the food, because if we're taking something away, then we want to make sure that we add something back in so that the food is still something that we enjoy.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that this is a great example of how people can get this step-by-step help with a coach, right? Because sometimes it's difficult for people to buy into this process of, oh, I need to change, or they know they need to change, but to actually make the change. So you're there to support them through those little baby steps, or even maybe identifying what it is that needs to change, which I think is kind of an investment for people. Sometimes it's like investing energy, investing time, and then investing money. So people, definitely hopefully will see the benefits of the reduction in their sugar addiction, but also there's a lot of like I think neurocognitive benefits or health benefits. And so can you talk a little bit more about what are the why would someone go through this process, and what are the benefits that they might see or the transformation that they might see?
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone finds that recovery from sugar addiction, what my clients explain it like, and really how I experienced it, was that it just felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And for myself personally, one, a lot of it had to relate back to that imposter syndrome and feeling like I was actually serving my nutrition clients in a way that I believed and that I understood to be sustainable for myself. So it wasn't just me giving them advice and not following it myself. Um, and one of my clients just really beautifully explained it as this feeling of peace. She just lives a peaceful life now. It's not this battle between what she thinks she should do and what she's actually doing. It's so congruent that she just sighed this big sigh of relief. So um, it all relates back to, you don't have to restrict your food intake anymore. You don't have to feel guilty about what you eat. You're not hungry all the time, because I think that that's a big message uh, that especially women are given through the mainstream messaging, is that we have to be struggling in order to be able to reach our goals, especially when we're like talking about body composition goals, is that it should be a struggle. And it's not that there's never going to be any challenges with you know overcoming a sugar addiction, but once you find that recovery, it should no longer feel like a constant struggle every day. And, some of the other major benefits that I've seen for myself, and that my clients have explained to me, is that, on top of the body composition, because I think that that's what a lot of people begin their journey focusing on, but then they realize that it goes so far beyond that. So that feeling of shame and guilt just seems to disappear. um, Mood balances out. You don't have to feel like I think the big thing that myself and others notice is that instead of reacting to the situation, they're now able to just respond to it, because we're not on that blood sugar roller coaster. That's Sorry, you can probably hear my dog in the background. um, You're not responding to that blood sugar roller coaster, uh, which just enables you to think more clearly and have that energy to get you through the day, rather than um, feeling those crashes all day. So those are some of the big ones, and then skin clears out. Like I said, no more brain fog. Another a really big one that I've experienced myself and a lot of my clients talk about is that anxiety and depression. And a lot of them didn't even realize that they were struggling with it um, until they were able to kind of come out the other side and see what it felt like to not have to battle with that every day.
Yeah, like the crashes, I definitely have. I can appreciate that as well, and the brain fog. And I know, like I said, I've done several times in my life where I've had zero sugar. I noticed a difference that it's yeah, sustaining that is, quite vigilant because you have to be quite vigilant because you don't realize how many things have sugar in it. There's added sugar in, everything from pasta sauce to any, like you said, any kind of processed foods, breads, all of those things have sugar in them. So it is difficult to avoid. And like you mentioned, you can avoid other things, but avoiding sugar is very difficult. You have to be on the radar like a lot. So, I love the dog in the background because we always to tell people you're going to hear whenever you hear on this podcast, kids, dogs, like people have real lives. So, hi, puppy. Um, but the question I wanted to ask you is, as sort of an entrepreneur yourself in this journey, what has been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome in this business and in this mission that you have of sharing this with people? And we wanna hear, like, just a little bit more about you and you as a business owner.
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say that my biggest challenge is just, um, I think it, allowing people or educating people to understand that this isn't something that they need to be ashamed about, because I think that that is just such a huge piece that, my clients, they don't want other people to know that they're seeking help for this, especially in the beginning. I think as time goes on, they become more comfortable with it, but they just feel so much shame around it that they don't want anyone to know that they have this problem. So, um, just educating people that it's not something that they need to feel badly about, I think is probably the biggest challenge that I struggle with. And fortunately for myself, um, when I discovered like that I was a sugar addict, or when when somebody explained it to me and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to accept that. For myself, I found it very relieving um, that I had a name for the problem that I was experiencing. So, for myself, right out of the gate, I was happy to kind of shout it from the rooftop that this is a problem and you don't have to be ashamed about it. But I didn't. I wasn't expecting to get that pushback from so many people that are still really afraid to let others in. And so what happens is that they suffer alone because they don't want those around them, those people that they love, to know what they're going through, because they don't think that they're going to understand. So that's a big piece that I really love talking about it now. Now that I understand that it's such a big problem, and that there are ways that we can go about that, and um, getting connected with a community of other like-minded individuals is one of the big things that we can start with, and then when they get more comfortable, um, they are able to open up to their families.
Yeah, the allowing of support or the allowing of yourself to tell people that you're in support. It reminds me of people with mental health problems, the stigma that people face and being able to find the right support or to say to tell people in their family that they are seeking or have gotten support. And I think that it's interesting to hear the parallels with this. And you were saying that sugar can be related to mental health as well. So it is kind of just a reminder of how many different things we as people have the opportunity to get resources to support us through our journey. And as we're thinking about our wellness, we have to think about it in such a holistic way and think about it um, almost from the perspective of who can we invite in on our team to
Mm,
support us.
mm,
So this is just another member of the team that people could have as a support to think about, how am I holistically supporting? How am I holistically going through my journey with my body and my nutrition? And in that, how am I also going to benefit from, getting rid of sugar and all these things you were mentioning, like brain fog and things like that. So, yeah, it just reminds me to think about my wellness again in a holistic manner. So I know that you are an RN as well as a nutritionist. And how do you maintain your wellness? I guess is a good question. What do you do with all of the knowledge that you have that is part of your like routine every single week?
yeah, that's a great question, and I think that that it changes. And I think that that's another big piece um, that I like to just educate around is that it's okay. It's okay that if things change and that, your week isn't perfect. And I listened to a really good conversation that I refer back to a lot. And it talked about, um, setting your goals and then rather than having that all or nothing mindset, if for some reason you can't do your goal at 100%, like what's 50% or what's 30%, like what could you still do? So if we think about like a workout, if your goal is to work out for an hour a day, um, and that doesn't happen, don't just quit the workout. Like maybe you can even do 10 minutes. So I think that that's been really important for myself in terms of my own self-care routine. And, the really core piece of that is sleep. It always goes back to sleep and making sure that I get to bed on time because I have a toddler, and anyone with children, especially young children, knows that your sleep often isn't your own. They wake up in the night. It's hard to get back to sleep. So having that dialed in to the best of my ability is really key. Because when I've had a good night's sleep, then everything else just seems to be to flow a little bit easier. So sleep for sure, and then having some kind of plan. So I do. Um, I think a younger version of myself would be horrified by this because I just really valued that spontaneity and, doing things off the cuff. But now, now I understand the value of really having a plan. And, that's like my bedtime routine. That's my morning routine. That's my meal plan. Like there's a plan for everything. And it relieves so much of the stress. It takes so much of the guesswork out of things. And to kind of bring that back around to cravings and sugar, um, when we're having to make, decisions all day long, we fall into this decision fatigue. And if you if you can implement a plan, and like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to follow the plan perfectly, but if you at least have an idea of how you want your day to go, um, you take a lot of that guesswork out. You take a lot of those decisions that exhaust you, which, when we're exhausted and we don't wanna make any more choices. When it comes to the food, we usually end up making a poor choice. Like, we we want the carbs, we want the comfort food, right? We don't want, to make a nourishing meal. So yeah, definitely, having some kind of plan has been, just so crucial for my own recovery.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth with periods of meal prepping throughout my adulthood, and I think that the weeks that I do it, I feel very accomplished and adulty. I don't know how to
Yeah,
describe it, but
yeah.
it's like I feel like I've achieved some sort of adult merit badge. It's when I have a fridge full of food that's like organized, and I have 3 meals a day that I don't have to think about. But it doesn't always happen. I think it takes a good amount of time and like you said, planning and purchasing and all of that stuff to really get that together. So, for me, it doesn't always work, but I try not to be spontaneous with my meals. As you said, I think that's a good tip as well, because when I do need to look for something spontaneously, I end up purchasing something, and usually it's not like the ideal. Like it's very rarely the vegetable and meat, some sort of combo that I always have when I'm cooking for myself. So I think there's a lot to be said about the schedule and the timing and being intentional, like you were thinking, wow, how do I fit all of this in? So you mentioned being a mom. Do you have any tips for maybe new moms or moms in general about how to like really get this under control for their kids? And so that way, family meals are not only healthy and nutritious, but also set up a kid for, healthy eating for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for myself, I was very fortunate that when I fell into this sugar addiction space, and even before that, I was a nutritionist, so I had a lot of the education and the knowledge at my fingertips. But the timing of it was really ideal for myself because my son was just learning, or just starting to eat, solid foods. So he's never known anything different. If your kids are a little bit older, then yeah, I mean, if they're used to eating, chicken fingers and fries or mac and cheese, and you're trying to transition to something a little bit different so that you don't have to make like three different meals every night, um, then again, I think it's important to just be realistic um, and to go slow, like make some changes and um, just be open to the fact that your kids aren't going to be receptive right away, but that doesn't mean that they won't be in the future. And I can't remember how many times it is. I've heard a few different numbers, but like when you introduce a new food to a child, it takes, I think I've heard 7 times, 7 introductions. I've even heard like up into the high teens before they actually accept that food and perhaps like it. So I think just being patient is really important. But if you're a new mom, then I think that it's an incredible opportunity for you to just feed your children whatever it is you're eating. I never did baby foods. We just whatever we were eating, I gave it to my son. Just we changed the texture to be appropriate for him. So the little baby magic bullet blender was like my best friend for that. But basically, what I'm trying to say is feed your kids what you're eating and try not to have those separate meals so that you really are modeling exactly what you want for them.
Yeah, I've seen that where people are cooking several different meals. I don't have kids, so I can't even imagine. I can barely get one together for myself. I don't know what it's like to try to attempt to make 3 meals in a day, that are at the same time for 3 different groups of people. And yeah, it just seems like, so much work. So shout out to moms who are doing
Mhm.
it, and especially if you're a working mom.
Yeah.
Super big shout out to you. And I think, it's a great tip to say, if you're eating healthy, why not extend the same things that's in your fridge for you to eat to your kids and just kind of appropriately make sure that they can digest and eat it. And that's, seems super simple, but I'm sure also takes time and, sort of preparation as well. So, however people can start to do this work, there's just so many things that you've mentioned today that people can take and, just run with, hopefully take it and just start somewhere is the goal. And getting people to really think about how can you make this a more sustainable part of your life so that it is part of your holistic wellness and you have the time and the space, like you said, carved out for it in your weekly routine. And I appreciate the morning routine, evening routine comment as well, because I know for me, I as a woman am now like, face cream is an actual part of my life. I appreciate this. So it's been such a great conversation with you to hear from you and your expertise. And I just wanted to add, one last comment. If people wanted to connect with you somewhere to work with you, you mentioned you're in Canada, but I don't know if you work with people all around the world. So can you just give a really quick 30-second plug for yourself? What can people, how can people connect with you? Why would they want to connect with you, or who should be connecting with you? And where can they find you to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, to start off, to keep it simple, you can find me on all social media platforms. It's a little bit long, but it's the same across all of them. It's Rachel Murray Holistic Nutrition, and my website is rachelmurrayholisticnutrition.ca. My email, it's the only one that's a little bit different, and it's just Rachel Murray Nutrition. So we take out that holistic. So Rachel Murray Nutrition at gmail.com. And yeah, if you're struggling with cravings or you think you're addicted to sugar or you are just curious about how a sustainable way to cut sugar down, then I'd love for you to reach out to me. I do run a Conquer Your Cravings masterclass, so you can go to my website to check out when the next date for that is going to be. And I also run a 9-week group coaching program called Sugar Freedom Forever for those who really want to conquer their cravings for good and discover how they can live that life of sugar freedom.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you and all that you had to share. And thank you, everyone who's listening to this episode. We really appreciate you being part of our audience and part of our community. And this has been our episode with Rachel Murray, where we talked all about how to get over your sugar addiction. And it's been a great episode. So thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Wendy.
Yeah, take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. It's been awesome to interview today's guest, and I hope that you leave inspired to take action. If you're looking for any of the information we spoke about, it's probably down in the show notes. Make sure that you're checking them out and you're clicking on any of the links that seem exciting to you. If you are looking for a coach or a consultant to help you with your social impact or your sustainability, reach out to me via my website, hop on my email list, or jump into one of my programs. All of the links are below. So excited to have you as part of the collective. Make sure that you come back and join us for another episode next week.